Let's look at solving rational equations. So here is a rational equation. Remember, rational expressions are when you have a variable in your numerator and denominator. So here we have a rational expression, but then it becomes an equation when we have that equal sign. So our goal is to solve this. Well, we can rewrite 15 as a fraction as well, and now we have a proportion. So now we can cross multiply and set those equal to each other. So 4x times 1 and then 15 times x minus 11. And now you solve this like a regular equation. So distribute on the right side gives you 15x minus 165. Subtract your 15x, and you get x equals 15. The biggest thing here is that we have to make sure that the value we get as our solution does not make our denominator 0. And if we plug 15 into our denominator, we do not get 0, so we're good to go. However, we cannot always just set up a proportion. So here we have a few more, like we have an extra piece, not allowing us to make a proportion. So instead of trying to set up a proportion, we're going to get rid of our fraction. So we need to multiply by what our denominator is, or our least common denominator. So in this case, our LCD would be x. So we multiply everything by x. So you have to distribute this x to all three pieces. So 8 over x times x would give you 8, and then plus 2x equals x squared. Move everything to one side. So I moved everything to the right side, but then wrote it on the left. You can factor this, or you could use quadratic formula. I just chose to factor. So you get x equals 4 and x equals -2. But again, we have to make sure that these don't make our denominator 0, which they don't. So our two solutions would be 4 or -2. Okay, here's another one. This time, when we see this originally, we need to factor our denominator. So we factor x minus 5x plus 5. And now we're going to multiply by that least common denominator again. So our least common denominator would be x minus 5 times x plus 5. So we multiply by both of those. Distribute it to both sides of our equation. They'll cancel right here, so you'll just be left with a 30. And then on the right side, your x minus 5s would cancel, leaving you with a 3 times x plus 5. So here's our equation, and now we can solve that by distributing. Subtracting your 15, divide by 3, gives you x equals 5. Last step is to make sure this does not make our denominator 0. However, it does. So if you plugged 5 in here, you'd get 25 minus 25, which makes your denominator 0. So we call x equals 5 an extraneous solution. Therefore, there's no real solution to this equation. Please solve this equation. And one last one. So here we have multiple pieces. Again, our first step is to factor. So I factored the denominator of our second fraction. Then we have to multiply by our least common denominator, and our least common denominator would be x plus 5, x plus 3. So I do that here. Again, distribute your least common denominator to everything. That leaves you with an x plus 5 times x plus 5 from this first fraction. Your least common denominator cancels here, so you're left with a plus 28 equals 4 times x plus 5, x plus 3. FOIL on both the left and the right side, so I did that here. Right side, distribute your 4, and then I combine my 25 and 28. And now move everything to one side. So I moved everything over to the right side. So we get 3x squared plus 22x plus 7. I went ahead and FOILed. Take 3 times 7. You get 21. List your factors. So 1 and 21, 3 and 7. Obviously, 1 and 21 is what multiplies to be 22. So you put those in your parentheses, but you have to divide by your leading coefficient. So factors would be 3x plus 1 and x plus 7. Solve both of these, you get x equals -1/3 and x equals -7 as our solutions. And neither one of these cause our denominator to be 0. So we have two solutions.